a full Senate on a bipartisan vote. And I'm saying all that because I want all of us to understand the implications of trying to get things done politically. You know, it's almost practically impossible to get something passed on the first go round. You have to go back and make multiple attempts and keep pushing it and keep educating the legislatures about it before you can get something passed. Yes, sir. No, this came as a hard copy in the mail to me. You know what? I'll scan it in. I'll send it to y'all. The second thing I wanted to mention is that we need volunteers for board positions. And I guess the biggest need is for the board chair position. We don't have any volunteers for that. No surprise, actually. But it would be good if we had at least one volunteer, preferably two, so we can have a true election rather than just a coronation. And I'm saying this for all the members at large, just, you know, anyone that has any thought that they might want to do it, please contact me and I'll talk to y'all. I'll talk to whomever wants to potentially run for that position or any other positions. I think we do have at least one of the open board seats. We do have a candidate for that, a very, very, very great candidate for that position. And so I think we're good there, but we do need a candidate for the board chair position. Third thing I wanted to mention is the Texas initiative to double the number of distributed solar installations in the state by 2030. And so there is currently 300,000. So we're looking at 300,000 more. And I did send an email out to all y'all about that recently. But to break that down a little further, and I think I put this in an email, 300,000 is 43,000 additional per year, or about 3,600 per month. That's statewide. But they drill that down to what we're looking at in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. The population of Texas is currently about 30 million. The population of the DFW Metroplex is about 6.5 million. That's about 22% of the state population. You just take those same percentages and extrapolate it out to what our percent of the goal is, or our amount of the goal is. Our proportionate share would come to 66,000 new installations by 2030 in the Metroplex, which equates to about 9,400 a year or 785 a month. So, yeah. So, yeah, hold on. So what we need to figure out is, how do we get that done? How do we do our portion of this, sir?
What fraction of our membership?
Was 600, I mean, 785?
No. What fraction of the members, how many members do you have in your
Yeah.
So how many of them have people had solar?
Well, all of us.
Well, no, I mean, you're doing the fractions for Dallas.
Yeah, no, I understand. But I guess one question I had is, I don't know how many solar installations have historically been added in the Metroplex over time. I mean, I think we need to understand that, so we'll know what the add is. And I don't know if James, you can figure that out, maybe Larry, how we can. But yeah, go ahead.
So Larry Howe has been doing some more detailed, which I think is in the Texas article. But one thing that Encore started doing, they have to file a distributed generation report every year with the PUC. And they started voluntarily breaking it down by city. So, but that's only once a year. I think it comes out in March. So you could look at that and you could compile data by city and look at it that way. Within the Metroplex, we did it back in, I don't even remember what year it was. We did a survey by looking at permit data, which is extremely painful. There's some company that's apparently doing it that I get emails from every once in a while, but I've never really looked at it. So I've been trying to look at the city of Dallas because it kind of ties in with the COG initiative. So I could try to share some of that. That's what I know about it.
Yeah, and if you can find or remember what that company was that is compiling the data, there's no point in us reinventing the wheel if they're already doing it. But you know, and if that's statewide, that's fine, because that's something that Pete and all of them at Texas can use to distribute the information out to everyone else. Ideally, what I would like to do is follow up this discussion with an email, just once again, putting all these numbers down in a hard form. And I'll copy Pete and I'll copy the other chapter board chairs, because they're, how can I put this diplomatically? They're less responsive than we've been to Pete's initiative. So I think if we keep it in front of them and they can see that we're trying to move forward, at least in this chapter, that may prompt them to at least take some steps to do what they need to do in El Paso or San Antonio, those other cities. But, you know, we need to get our heads together and figure out how we can ensure that there's 785 new solar installations every month in this Metroplex area for the next 7 years. That's our goal. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. I take from your comment that when you say the Metroplex, you're including all the cities in the how many counties are you referring to?
Well, no, 16 counties.
16 counties.
In the South area.
Okay.
And something like 220 cities.
So 220 cities by 700 and some. Now you're talking about 4 per city?
If you break it down like that, it doesn't seem as daunting, but you know, it's still something that we need to work on. And obviously, it would behoove us if we worked with other like-minded organizations. And I recently met with Rita Beving at Public Citizen. I think you did too. And I just asked her about helping us and how they might help us. And then I plan to go to the Sierra Club Christmas party tomorrow, so I can buttonhole them and talk to them, you know, because they've got great plans. Get them to help us or work with us on this thing. And then Climate Reality Project has their Christmas party next Saturday. I'm going to try and go to that again, just to talk to them about working with us on this thing. And if nothing else, I'm going to get some emails from those people so that we can keep in touch with them and keep them apprised of what we're trying to do. The other thing I would like to do, just so y'all know, is we're redoing or plan to redo the NTREG website, and we'll be discussing it at the board meeting after this meeting. But I would like to have something on the website just showing our progress toward our goal. And I did mention that to Pete this past week, and she kind of demurred from wanting to do that, which I thought was kind of defeatist. But at any rate, I think if we do it and we can show that, hey, it keeps people involved, it keeps people informed about what we're doing, it might help. And so the other thing I did want to mention was that Pete Parsons at Texas and her executive assistant came up here on Tuesday, and we talked about the Texas Solar Institute. And I just asked her about helping us and how they might help us. And I think if we do it and we can show that, hey, it keeps people involved, it keeps people informed about what we're doing, it might help. And so the other thing I did want to mention was that Pete Parsons at Texas and her executive assistant came up here on Tuesday, to meet with the city of Louisville about implementing Solar App Plus. And so I offered to just tag along with them. So I ended up doing that. And while we were eating lunch, I did mention that, we would like to help Texas reach that goal. And again, the other chapters just weren't very responsive, but I'm hopeful that if they can see the communication between us and Pete, then maybe some of them will get on board as well. Worth a try anyway. But we did meet with the couple people, the city of Louisville staff on this issue, and they were extremely interested in implementing Solar App Plus. And they actually tried to do it in the past, and they got stopped by the city attorney. And oh gosh, this is so absurd that their city attorney would not allow them to implement Solar App Plus because she was concerned about the solar installation companies paying the permit fee to a third party to approve the permit. And I said, so you're saying the city attorney is concerned about that $25 that the solar installation companies are going to be essentially paying to the federal government is somehow going to sway their decision on approving this permit? And they said that was her concern. Said, it's a fully automated system. Someone would have to go in and literally monkey around with the system to change it to get some permit approved for this $25 fee. And I said, all right, so just round figures, how many solar permits do you get per year? And they said about 250. And I said, so you're talking about $6,200 plus or minus in permit fees. Is there some other way that you can collect that money and then y'all pay the money to, NREL or the Department of Energy? And they said, well, we're thinking about that. We're trying to figure out how we can do that just to bypass that concern of the city attorney. But at any rate, so the meeting went well. And like I said, they're very, very interested in implementing Solar App Plus, but they have to just get around to the legal department, the city attorney, to do so. So with that, I think that's, oh, yes, ma'am.
So I read an article in the Washington Post the other day talking about what is the most effective way to get people to change their behavior and quote, go green. And education was the least effective, which pains me because I worked for Dallas College for 25 years. Social comparison was the most effective way. And that means if people see it go in, like in Bill's neighborhood, all of a sudden his neighbors are going to come over and start asking him about it. And so I love this project that you're talking about. I think that it's great, and it's going to be the most effective way we can use to get more people to install solar. So thank you. Thank you for
This way, we can get Taylor Swift.
There you go. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It's not a bad idea.
So that's true. Yeah. Yeah. Taylor Swift.
Everybody,
Yeah. We're talking about Taylor Swift getting involved in our program to help us toward our goal of installing a bunch of solar energy. And the other thing to that point, I'm interested in switching out my gas-fired water heaters, like the last thing in my house. I was going to switch it out for a heat pump water heater. And so I looked online. They said, oh, yeah, we have them at Lowe's. We have them at all these places. So I went to Lowe's. There was not one single model of heat pump water heater at Lowe's. And I thought, how can you sell it if you don't even have it where people can see it? All they had was all these gas-powered water heaters or resistant electric hot water heaters. And so, and one of the things that Rita mentioned, and I like this idea, is to go talk to some big local companies like Baker Brothers or whomever, or Milestone, and just say, hey, you know what? Y'all can be on the cutting edge if you offer heat pump water heaters as an alternative. And especially right now, because you can get tax credits, which are transferable from the IRA. And so I thought, you know what, if someone we know or someone in another organization that we're going to partner with for all these things knows someone high up at Baker Brothers or Milestone, let's go talk to them. You know, what's the downside? Yes, sir.
Yeah, another idea to promote solar would be to go to these investment groups. They're often in these different communities. I know, like my neighborhood has the investment group. It's on next door, and they have I don't know how often they meet, but several of these groups around the neighborhood have that. And if you can show them, the investment in solar and what it does, and present that kind of in those type of meetings, people might be willing to treat it as an investment, and it becomes something cool to do and that kind of stuff. So that's a place you can advertise it. The other thing, like, most of the new houses they're putting in have very steep roofs. They've got architecture that really prevents you from putting an array anywhere. So is community solar, not what Larry was doing, where it was kind of like bidding groups, but truly community solar, where there's like a large array that's put on a piece of property somewhere, but everyone can pay in to own a fraction of it. And then, they get that investment credit back, and it's all allocated. Is there a program like that going on in the Dallas Fort Worth area?
Yeah, I'm part of a nonprofit which is working on that, but currently the problem in Texas in general is just financial. In other words, you can go to Green Mountain Energy and you can sign up for a local solar plan, which is, under some definitions, community solar, and pay 14 cents a kilowatt hour, I think, right now. So it's difficult to sell a community solar to people that want to pay less than that, which is really what you have to do. There's sort of a limited number of people that want to do it for the good of the planet. But so there's a DOE has sponsored several initiatives to try to promote community solar, and there's one called the National Community Solar Partnership, which Susan Alvarez was a member of on behalf of the city of Dallas when she was there. So there's a lot of initiatives going on. They have a goal of doing something, which I can't remember, by 2025, which is coming up pretty quickly. So there's lots going on, but it's a tough sell in Texas right now.
What is it coming out to be in this area? So as an investor in the community solar project, right, they get a tax credit, and then they're paying electricity, and then they're getting credited for electricity that's being produced, right? What is that? What are the numbers?
The most common model now is a subscription. The original, well, I shouldn't say the original, there's a traditional idea where you actually buy into a project, and that's sort of become less popular. Now what's more popular is a subscription model where you subscribe to something the same way as you would as an REP. But the energy is coming from ideally a geographically local array, which is also difficult because nobody wants to take up land in an urban area for a solar array. They want to use it for a park or for buildings or for housing or something or other. But in any case, so that's kind of how it would work. So it would be really similar to if you signed up with Green Mountain Energy for, in their case, local solar is something which is within maybe 100 miles of, they've got one in around each of the Dallas, Houston, and I think San Antonio. But so it's finding a private company to do something like that and then sell it as a subscription plan. So that's why it's not currently available, is because nobody's found a way to really make it financially attractive. Yeah, San Antonio is a municipal electric utility.
Can you put community solar on rooftops?
Do we want to continue this discussion or? Yeah, the answer is yes. People do it on schools and things in other states, but I don't know of any in Texas right now.
Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, I know it. Yeah. So, yeah, and I know that, just from personal experience, and let me make this one comment, then we'll get to our main speakers for the day. I know from personal experience that there are some, less than ethical salespeople out there representing solar installation companies that, have come to my house. I've had a number of them come to my house, and I tell them up front, I'm involved in, the local chapter American Solar Energy Society, just so they'll know I'm not some completely uneducated homeowner. And I've had these people tell me that, oh, well, Texas has a net energy metering program. And I said, no, they don't. And they say, oh, yes, they do. And I said, I'll tell you what, if you can bring me a copy of that law where they have net energy metering in Texas, I'll buy your system. Guess what? They don't show up. So at any rate, so with that, I know we have more discussion, and like I said, I'll send an email out, and please, let's just keep the discussion going. We can do it by email. Oh, no. Yeah, I know. And when I was talking to Pete the other day, she was really spun up about it. She said it's just really undermining the entire industry. Yeah. 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 There you go. Okay. So, let me introduce our two speakers today, and we are doubly blessed because we have two very good speakers today. The presentation today is on the air quality improvement initiatives in the DFW Metroplex in North Texas, and the takeaways from the fifth National Climate Assessment. And just so y'all will understand what that is, local governments across the region are working with the North Central Texas Council of Governments, I'll just call them COG from here on out because that's what everyone calls them, to develop the Dallas-Fort Worth Air Quality Improvement Plan. The plan will create a roadmap for the region to improve air quality, protect public health, and reduce impacts of extreme weather events. Development of this plan is funded through the Environmental Protection Agency's Climate Pollution Reduction Grants Program, well, that's a mouthful. The presentation will provide an overview of the DFW Air Quality Improvement Plan and will seek feedback, there we go, from meeting attendees on potential measures that could be included. So y'all keep your minds going for this. This is your opportunity to provide input. In addition, an overview and key takeaways from the fifth National Climate Assessment will be shared. So our two presenters today are Savana Nance, who is currently the Senior Air Quality Planner at COG, where she leads initiatives on the Clean Vehicles initiatives and teams with and supports the development of the Dallas-Fort Worth Air Quality Improvement Plan. She graduated from the University of North Texas with a bachelor's degree in risk management and financial services. And the second presenter, and all y'all know her, is Susan Alvarez, who currently serves as the Director of Environment and Development for the 16 county, I should have read that earlier, I would have known 16, not 12 counties, 16 county North Central Texas Council of Governments, where she guides regional cooperative efforts around materials management, waste management, and recycling, natural resources, public works, regional codes, watershed management, and development excellence, including support for regional climate resilience planning efforts. She managed development and adoption of the City of Dallas's comprehensive environmental and climate action plan. We were aware of that. And now serves on the author team for the Southern Great Plains, Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas chapter of the 5th National Climate Assessment. And Susan got her engineering degree from Rice, not Texas A&M. I won't make that mistake and insult you again. So we were going to start with Susan, and then she will give the microphone to Savannah. So please help me welcome Susan Alver. If you stand right there.
Okay. All right, stand by. So what I am here to do, I always love an opportunity to talk about climate action, and so jumped on this, but I'm really going to set the table first in other words, this is what's going on nationally. The National Climate Assessment was released to the public by President Biden a couple weeks ago, right before Thanksgiving. It reflects the work of some 14 federal agencies, over 400 scientists, and it's a good read if you're struggling from insomnia. It is 1,200 pages long. It is a great read, but they've got it split up into different things. So just for grins, I think we skipped one, maybe not. So okay. Yeah, so there we go. So this is important. Science could and should be nonpartisan. The 5th National Climate Assessment is done in the Global Change Research Act, which was signed into law by George Bush I back in 1990. So it's an ongoing effort as mandated by Congress to bring forth the best science we have. I believe one of the housing agencies just joined the 14 that are there. And then for this year's plan, they sucked in miscellaneous other people like me. And I tell you, I went to the authors team meeting and I was feeling very, I had some, what is it they call imposter syndrome? But they're like, no, you're a practitioner. You know how this stuff works in real life. We're just ivory tower folks. And so it was a great experience working on this. I feel very proud of the efforts we did. Let's see if it's okay. It is going to go. So it's a wide range of technical information. We used in the city of Dallas, we used the 4th National Climate Assessment for the base data to do our climate plan. We look at a range of impacts depending on if we get our act together relative to decarbonization or not. And it provided multiple opportunities for public engagement around this. One of the things that I'm really proud of this year is in the previous years, while they talked about equity, there really wasn't that voice of folks that are directly impacted by climate at the table. This year, they pulled in folks from Puerto Rico, they pulled in the tribes and indigenous knowledge. So that's huge in the world of academics to pull in indigenous knowledge with all the PhDs that are not indigenous. And so they did that. They did Spanish English outreach, which was a first, and the entire report the first chapters are translated Spanish. The entire report is intended to, but again, it's a 1,200 page report that takes a little bit of time. So we're working on it. So there's the table of contents. Like I said, it's over 1,200 pages. The reason this is cool and important is you can kind of pick and choose because it'll take you a while to wade through the whole thing. A bulk of the overview is in the first 4 chapters, and then there's national topics, and then they hone down into what it means locally. The challenges that we look at in Texas and Oklahoma and Kansas are a whole different ball of wax than what our friends along the Gulf Coast are looking at and our friends in the northeastern states. And so it gets it to a little bit more local conversation. The other thing is we looked at compound events. When you have a hurricane on top of a fire, on top of other flooding, that sort of thing. And so it is pretty widespread or pretty wide ranging in topics. The other new, so the new chapters are in blue. One of the things that we found in Dallas is we had to make the business case for climate action. Okay. Sorry.
I can see it live on my.
All right. I'm not seeing it. There we go. I'm seeing all of Savannah's fabulous slides.
You're on slide 26 right now.
Well, I want to be on slide 5, so please help.
Let me get the next slide.
So this is the first year that they really honed in on environmental justice. It's also the first year that they really honed in on the economics of climate change. There we go. Oh, thank you. All right, so I will. Okay. So this is kind of what's new in this year's climate assessment. And I just mentioned the economics and social system, just mentioned really diving down into environmental justice. I know in our particular chapter, it was really good because we had several representatives of tribal governments participating, and they would call BS on stuff. Likewise, we had some community members from South Texas along the ship channel that would call BS on stuff. And so us local practitioners, I think that was our job, was to kind of sort through the facts and what really reflects in local communities on the ground. All of the science that was used, all of the facts, all the studies had to be peer-reviewed, published work. So none of this self-publishing blog that was not deemed to be sufficient for purposes of this study. One of the other things that I think is hugely important, and it will be helpful to the many communities that are working on either updating their climate plans or doing climate plans, is there is a national climate assessment atlas of data. And it gets down to the county level and then some. It's GIS based. It's fabulous. It's really, I'm a nerd. It's really cool. And I think it will be helpful to us at the COG as we're doing our study, and to others in the area that are looking at, what does it mean for us? Is this stuff real? So key takeaways, US is taking action on climate. They really are. We are seeing increased risk. The social inequities that we already have are made worse in a climate scenario, mainly because of underinvestment in our frontline communities. We do have viable solutions to address this. What we lack, perhaps, is the social will to do so. And it's a really good opportunity to reinvent our communities to make them better. So what I'm going to do a little bit is give you some of the stuff from big picture and some of the stuff that focuses in on chapter 26, which is the Southern Great Plains. And I'm going to try to do it quickly so that Savannah can talk about what we're actually doing in our local planning efforts. One other thing that I probably need to clarify is the COG has a 16 county area. We have 12 counties where we have transportation network responsibilities. And so it's a little bit weird. The 12 isn't totally wrong, but we're working on the climate plan for the entire region. You can see some differences between temperature, summer and winter from 1900 to 2020, the last 120 years. Typically, we're seeing increased precipitation in our part of the country, but it depends on season. What do you know? An increase in extreme events. And again, in Texas is the bottom line. This isn't something that is a surprise. Yeah, 52. So the big takeaway on that part of it is that we used to say a critical storm about once a month nationwide. Now it's one every 2 or 3 weeks. And so they are becoming more expensive. We are getting significantly severe events more often. So there's Texas increasing our temperature. A lot of it depends, and this is on the range of estimated future temperature. If we are able to effectively address carbon in the atmosphere, we're on the lower part of that graph on the right. If not, we're on the upper part. Also with precipitation, again, looking at an intermediate, which is probably at this point, I don't think we're looking at a low scenario anymore. We've passed that. So we're looking at either intermediate or very high. You can see that in particular, South Texas, and I know they've already adjusted the rainfall amounts used for planning, but it looks like we may need to do that again. And this is one of my favorite graphs ever by NOAA, which is the increase in billion-dollar disaster events. And there's a this is water, but it's actually the total. But you can see it's visually evident that we're getting more events and they're more costly as we move forward. Part of that may be because we have more people living in cities. In Texas, I think it's something like 83% of the population lives in a federally declared municipal government to some degree. But the other thing that is concerning about this particular graphic is these are insurance losses. They don't reflect those members of our community that are not insured. So in each part of the chapter, we look at, okay, here's the issue. Here's what you can do about it, and just throws out some ideas of things that are happening. And every single one of the actions in the plan has here's some stuff you can think about doing. So it's a great resource to planners that are trying to figure out what they can adopt realistically in their part of the country. So this is something that you probably will like. These are recent growth in renewables across, I think it was the last 10 years. And average costs of renewable energy are going down. And so with those costs going down, you're seeing more adoption, which is really helpful. I love this graph. So this is from our particular chapters from Winter Storm. Those lovely little blobs reflect power outages during the winter storm. The blue ones are natural gas. Green, I believe, if I remember right, is wind. And there's some solar outages, and there's a giant nuclear one down on the coast. So to me, this is really interesting because you'll hear misinformation about where the issues are. This is based on plant-specific data. The larger the dot, the larger the capacity of facility that went down. My favorite, this again is the billion-dollar disasters. We lead the country. And that's the fact about one every 3 weeks now. So we're behind. This is kind of, it's kind of a complicated graph, but it is reflecting on what people are experiencing with extreme events, being rainfall, temperature, and also sea level rise. We're not as concerned with that here in the Dallas area, but my friends in Houston are under sea level influence, and they are seeing it. And they're seeing it both with respect to surface water and also groundwater intrusion. So one of the things that the scientists that we had scientists from the National Academy of Science review this. Originally, we had a photograph that we used of a high school football game, and they made fun of us. And so we now have a picture of a park in Kansas. But realistically, it does impact how we play. It does impact how we do recreation. We see sports-related injuries and deaths due to extreme heat. And I think if you talk to one of those high school football coaches, they're fully aware of the challenges. And so that's one of the local impacts that we identified. Impacts on outdoor, again, the air quality. And then this one is kind of another one of the complicated graphs, but I like it. So this is available mitigation strategies and how we get to net zero. And it includes sequestration. On the bottom is blue, and the other is reductions. So it shows that there are things that we can do, that they will be effective if we implement them. And again, there's stuff we can do. I'm not going into that because Savannah's got some of what we're looking at locally. So one of the other things that we're looking at is disparate impacts. And this is a graph of African-American communities that are flooding in the region. Increased. And then this is the other thing that's kind of interesting. And this is what happens when you have scientists that start playing with data. So these three graphs are job creation and losses under business as usual, which is the far right graph, under effective implementation of renewables, which is the middle. And the first one is like if we kind of sort of halfway do it. So it's business as usual does not help us with respect to creating jobs. And part of that is due to the disruption from climate events. Again, we looked at equity in every single chapter of the report. This was from ours relative to hurricanes and looking at what we can do to help some of the communities of color down along the coast that are impacted. And it is an opportunity for us. Yes, we're under a pretty significant threat. In change, there is opportunity. And so we have opportunities to do better by our community. This was one from our own chapter. The 5 before was from the national chapter. Our local chapter, we find that our local infrastructure is significantly impacted by climate, particularly our water infrastructure. And that costs money. And so some of the things that we were looking at is how do you make yourself more resilient to power outages? How do you keep your schools open? And so in every single section of the report, we're looking, what can we do about this? Not just that it's a problem, but what can we do about it? The other thing that's a little bit surprising it was surprising to the whole team working on this, is even in our deep red states, people are taking action. They are making plans. They are working at the local level to make their communities more resilient. So good examples across the whole region of effective planning. And those planners are talking to each other about, hey, did y'all do this? Sometimes they're working on grants together, but this was a surprising but good graph. This is the other thing that's kind of neat, and it's looking at basically the state of planning across the country. The slash lines are where there are statewide plans to address climate. Some of the research I did during the legislature to help prepare testimonials for city council members was Texas is one of 17 states that does not have a statewide climate action plan. We're one of 3 states with coastal properties that has not looked at coastal resilience. And so we're vulnerable. So actions are being done, but they're kind of slow. We're not doing enough fast enough to really be effective. We do have the ability to implement actions that increase local resilience and increase our ability to effectively address environmental justice. We just need more. With that, here's the team. This is my cohorts for the last 3 years. Fantastic team of scientists and practitioners like me. And this is the chapter citation and where you can get more information. It's a fabulous effort. And with that, that's the big picture. I've set the table now for Savannah to tell you more about what we're doing at the COG to really expand local action. That's the side, but don't do
Okay.
it too hard
Okay.
or too fast.
Okay, will do. Can everyone hear me okay? Is this working? Is this on? Okay. Can Zoom confirm that they can hear me? Yeah, okay, great. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you. My name is Savana Nance. I'm a senior air quality planner at the North Central Texas Council of Governments in our transportation department. So Sue is our director of environment and development. I'm in transportation, but we work very closely together. And this plan is really a collaborative effort between our two departments. And then we'll also be receiving some assistance from other departments as well. So just some background on the Dallas-Fort Worth Air Quality Improvement Plan. This was, as I mentioned, funded from the EPA's, I'm sorry. Sure, I can try. This is funded through the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant, which is one of the new grant programs that came out with the Inflation Reduction Act. It's being administered by the Environmental Protection Agency, and it's a two-phase grant program. So first phase is to develop a climate action plan. Second phase is to implement it. Not really sure why the slides are a little cut off, so sorry about that. But the first phase are going to be what's in blue. So that's the planning. So we have to make a priority climate action plan, a comprehensive climate action plan, and then a status report, which is basically how are we doing on implementing the plan that was developed. So the EPA wanted regional plans, and they wanted a lead for each region. And so the North Central Texas Council of Governments said, hey, on behalf of the North Texas region, we want this funding, we want to participate in this effort, we want to develop a plan. So we're collaborating with our local governments, Dallas, of course, Fort Worth, everyone's very involved. They're giving us feedback, but we're also doing a lot of public involvement and asking for feedback from people like you guys, which is why we're out here today. And this plan will reduce greenhouse gases and local air pollutants. So the name of our final plan is going to be the Dallas-Fort Worth Air Quality Improvement Plan. It's funded through the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. So if you kind of heard us switch between saying the two, that's how those two are connected. As I mentioned, this is two phases. So it's planning and making the plan, and there's funding for that. And then there's funding for implementing the plan. However, the implementation funding is actually kind of in between the planning. So you would think kind of planning is first, and then you get money to implement the plan. It's actually pretty aggressive, where we have to develop a priority climate action plan by March of 2024. And that's going to be very focused on short term, what can we do right now to reduce greenhouse gas emissions? And then on April 1st, we turn around and we tell the EPA, okay, these are the things in our priority climate action plan that we need money to implement locally. So it's a great opportunity. It's just an aggressive timeline. But to Sue's point, that's what needs to be done, right? So we need aggressive action, and we need things to be done very soon to help us reduce emissions and hopefully reach the Biden administration's goal of net zero by 2050. So we're kind of here today to talk about primarily the priority climate action plan and what can we do very soon to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But if you guys have recommendations for long-term policies as well, feel welcome to provide those. And then one thing that I wanted to mention that we don't have a slide on is not only is the North Central Texas Council of Governments participating to make a regional plan, but there are several other major metro areas in Texas that are participating. So Houston, San Antonio, Austin, El Paso, they're all participating. But the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality is also participating as well. So they're going to make a statewide plan for everyone. We are developing a more local plan. So to Sue's point about Texas being one of 17 states that doesn't have a climate action plan, they will by the end of this because they accepted the grant money and they said they're going to do it. So I don't have the link to the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality's webpage, but we could send it out after. So if you guys have recommendations or want to give feedback to them too, I would encourage you to do so. So as I mentioned, we are using the Climate Pollution Reduction Grants Fund to develop our Dallas-Fort Worth Air Quality Improvement Plan. We are looking for measures that will both help us improve local air quality, but also reduce greenhouse gas emissions to help combat climate change. We would like cost-effective measures as much as we can, and we would like measures that primarily benefit low-income and disadvantaged communities. As I mentioned, very focused on ozone-forming pollutant reductions to help us meet the federal standard for ground-level ozone. And we will be covering all 16 counties. We did not actually have to do that with the grant. The grant was actually only for 11 counties. We chose to expand to cover all 16. And this is an effort between the transportation, the environment development, and our workforce solutions department. So we are also working with local governments, special districts, so utilities, water districts, and more. And we're going to be addressing all of the sectors. So energy, transportation, solid waste, water, ag, and carbon removal, which is not necessarily a sector, but one thing we can do. And I did bring a list of potential energy measures that's on the back table over there if you didn't grab one as you walked in, because I'm going to be touching on those today and hoping we can get your feedback on those. So the implementation grants are, as I mentioned, due April 1st, 2024. So we make the priority climate action plan, that's due March of next spring, turn around, ask for money to implement it. And what's both amazing about this grant program is that there's a lot of money. So the EPA is planning to award in between 30 to 115 awards nationwide. And you can ask for up to $500 million, which is a lot. And they are really encouraging regional applications. So we are anticipating that we'll submit a regional application as well. They basically did that, not to get too nitty-gritty into the grant details, but they are scoring applications on the total cumulative benefits, and there's no limits to the number of projects and programs. So why wouldn't we just do one application with everything the region wants to do, so that way we're scored really high. And so far it seems like all of our local governments have been supportive of that, and so that's kind of what we're planning to do next spring. So basically, there is 4.6 billion total available under this. And so that's how they're expecting it to be split up. Yes. So if you kind of sum up all the different tiers, it should be 4.6 billion. Actually, I think it's 4.3 for the general competition because they're doing a set aside for tribes. But besides the point, so that's kind of where they're splitting up that 4.6 billion. And you'll notice if you ask for less, you are more likely to be awarded, but we are the 4th largest metro area, so we'll probably ask for a lot. Oh, sorry. Yes. So
Money coming to the government, but needing to go to the industries to implement infrastructure changes.
So the lead applicant has to be a municipality, a tribe, or a state, but that doesn't mean that they have to be the one that actually does the work. They can do a sub-award to an industry. So that's most likely what it would end up being. So for example, one of the examples of a measure could be home weatherization efforts. So maybe the city of Dallas says we want to expand our weatherization efforts, but we need more money to do so. And so they could ask for additional funds from the EPA to expand that, but the actual funding would go to residents. So you could do the same for an industry effort.
Do you have a graph showing like where the sources are? So the show is kind of like where are the major areas need?
Yes. Well, I don't know if we have point sources, but we do have pie charts that show emissions. We'll show you in a moment. So on the implementation grants, you're probably wondering what's eligible. Basically anything that improves air quality, which is an amazing opportunity, but it also makes it really hard to plan because there's so many things we could do. And now we have to figure out, okay, but what's best? What makes the most sense? So the EPA has some goals for the program, not every single measure, and a measure is a policy, a program, anything like that. Not every single measure has to meet every single goal, but we should try to meet as many as we can. So transitioning towards a decarbonized economy, improving air quality, innovative policies and programs that can be scaled up, low income and disadvantaged communities, high labor standards, and supporting measures for which funding is available or insufficient. So that's a big thing that we're looking at is if there's already funding to do diesel to electric, medium and heavy duty vehicle replacement, do we need more money for that? Maybe we need money to do something else. And then it can be a brand new effort. It can be an expansion of a current measure. So my example of City of Dallas may be expanding their home weatherization efforts. They can just ask for more money to do that. And then one thing just to keep in mind is anything that you ask for money for from the implementation grants has to be in a PCAP. So it has to be either in ours or the state's. So we just want to keep reminding people of that because we're trying to make sure people are engaged with us as possible because we want to make sure we're putting everything in the PCAP that the region might want to do. And so we're not getting to the point where someone has a great idea on March 3rd after we've turned in the PCAP and then we can't ask for money for it. Okay.
Not going to be asking for the grant money. It's these individual entities.
Nope, we plan to ask for the grant
Okay.
money on behalf of the region and we would be subawarding to individual entities. So that would be local governments, maybe industry, maybe not. We're kind of working out with the state, who's the best person to handle that. Water utilities,
Okay.
regular utilities, and
Thank
more.
you.
Yeah.
Educational institutions.
Oh, yes. Yeah, possibly.
And this is the EPA, right?
Mhm.
Okay, because DOE's has a giant one due next, or concept paper due next week, and another concept paper due like second week in January. And this is a decarbonization of industrial processes.
Oh, yes, yes, definitely. And so that's another example of, is that DOE funding adequate? Or do we need more funding than what's being provided from the Department of Energy for industry decarbonization? So that's a good example of.
The timing should be opposite. They should get the planning first, and then instead of asking the company industry to do something, and then
Yeah,
have the
there's a lot of challenges, but yeah, that's one of them.
My understanding is the EPA is trying to get as much money under Inflation Reduction Act out as quickly as practicable. And so while in a perfect world, we would have a more linear process where we do the plan and then we have a really well-developed concept and we do the grant application to fund the different concepts. And there's multiple grants for multiple things. We're not in for political scenarios, or that's not where we're at. And so that's why we really, really need input on what people really think we can and should do. And I don't know if Savannah mentioned this or not, but the other little caveat is these projects need to be implemented within 5 years. And so it's not going to be like a pilot study for more air quality. It's going to be, I don't know, diesel reduction or community solar at community colleges or things like that that we can do fairly quickly. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't want to bring up the fact that EPA is trying to get the money obligated as soon as possible, but Sue did, so it's fine.
Well, that's really the driver on the schedule.
Well, and
DOE's under the same gun.
so for the planning grants deliverables, I just wanted to highlight that what we're making for March 31st is a pretty high level plan compared to something like the City of Dallas's comprehensive plan. And it's going to be focused on, so it's going to have an inventory, which we've started working on. And to Sue's point about short-term things, that is what the priority climate action plan is. It's priority measures or short-term measures. It's things that can be done in the next basically 5 years. We also have to do a low-income and disadvantaged communities benefits analysis. We have to make sure that local governments or whoever the implementer is has the authority to implement it. So I'm sure you guys are familiar about City of Dallas trying to ban gasoline lawn equipment. And then the state said no. So
And then ironically, federal law precludes either the state or local government
Yes.
from banning that equipment.
so not anything that no one has authority to do. So probably not going to put that in our plan. We're really going to be focused on voluntary incentives that we can do, not really banning anything, or any disincentives. And that's because we want to get these things implemented. We want to meet the timeline, and doing things like that could potentially slow us down. So it's just not our priority for this. And then we have to identify other funding, or if we need CPRG implementation grant funding, we'll indicate that. And then the comprehensive climate action plan, that's whenever you're going to see targets, projections, both short and long-term measures. So going out to 2050. And then benefits analysis for the entire region, and then also workforce planning analysis. So how do we make sure that long-term we have enough jobs to implement the measures we want to do in our region? And then, as I mentioned, status report, we're required to do it, but it's basically just, are we meeting as much as we can the targets that we have set? Anything that is in the plan, we are not actually obligated to do because it is just a plan, but we're going to do our best to implement everything that is in the plan. If we ask for money from the implementation grants, we are obligated to do it. So that's the point whenever an obligation comes in. And this is just a little more detail about the priority climate action plan and when we're hopefully targeting for some preliminary things to be available. So emissions inventory, we actually already have one that we're expanding for the entire 16 counties. The one we have is just for 12 counties. Hopefully that will be done in January. Then we will have short-term projects, programs, policies identified, hopefully January. We'll see. We will have a benefits analysis done for disadvantaged communities in 2024. So that will be looking at things like beyond air quality, what are the benefits? So that can be reduced energy cost, more access to food and other things. So just what's called a co-benefit. And then the review of authority to implement, as I mentioned, and a funding analysis. So figuring out how do we implement these? Where can we get the money? Is it locally funded? Is it asking for federal funds or more? Yes, go ahead. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, we have a website, so the problem, we will definitely make everything available on the website for people to comment on.
Okay.
That is actually a requirement of the grant, is that all of the plans have to be posted either on the EPA site, or we're just going to post it on ours too. But we are having to work so quickly, we probably don't, it will probably be posted in like February, right?
Okay.
Because we're developing stuff right now.
Right.
Which is unfortunate because ideally we would have it up earlier, so the public has more time to review and comment on it. But with the compressed timeline,
Yeah.
it just might not be feasible. So yes, everything will be available.
Okay.
Will it be the ideal time frame that we would want in a perfect universe? Probably not.
So could y'all at least send it out to interested groups like NTREG and Sarah Clevin? Oh,
So that's just the energy, but on the website, I'll in a minute
okay.
point out some things that are available online if you guys want to go
Okay.
and check that out.
All right. Thank you.
So you asked about emission sources. So we have on the left side, that is nitrogen oxides, which is the precursor to ground level ozone inventory. And then on the right side, we actually recently completed a greenhouse gas emissions inventory for just 12 counties. This is 2019 data because with COVID, things were a little weird in 2020 and 2021. So this was the most recent data we could get that we felt was accurate. So 2022, 2023 data is still kind of difficult to get. So we're just going with 2019 for now, which is pretty consistent with a lot of our peers that are working on this. And that 12 county inventory is actually available online. So it's a little small at the bottom of the page, but you can go there to read it. So that inventory, we are just expanding to have 4 more counties. So you can read the 12 county inventory right now if you want, but the final version will be posted probably in January. And really what I wanted to point out on this slide was that there is a lot of overlap in the emission sources between greenhouse gas emissions and criteria pollutants, specifically nitrogen oxides. And so really, whenever we're reducing emissions from one, we will probably have benefits from both for the majority of measures. So I'm in the transportation department, so you can see that we are a pretty big piece of that pie. But the second biggest piece of the pie, at least for greenhouse gas emission inventories, is energy sector. So excited to be with you all today to talk about energy things. I don't have it broken out on that slide, but that is the combination of residential, industrial, forgetting the third one, commercial, thank you. So, and I think residential is the biggest portion of that, just barely, it's a little over 1/3. Yes, yes.
So with respect to the energy, is that the carbon dioxide produced from the sources creating the electricity regardless of where it's located, but it's being used in this area, or is that being generated in this area? Okay. Okay.
So where it's consumed. So if
Thank you. So no, to clarify, it includes energy wherever it's generated that is used in our region.
sorry.
Do heavy duty vehicles include school buses?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So, because I can see that's 58% of the 42%. So, that alone is close to a quarter heavy duty vehicles
Mhm.
on the nitrogen oxide. So it seems like that's some low hanging fruit there. If we can just convince the school districts to convert to EVs.
Yep. No, you're correct. And one thing to keep in mind is heavy duty vehicles are responsible for a significant portion of nitrogen oxides, but there's a lot less of them on the road. So
One comment, how about vehicles going through the region? So we have major transportation corridors here. I'm assuming this is all vehicles that it's at some point of the day are in the region. In other words, there might be a big tractor trailer truck or car driving up I-35, right? This isn't just locals. This is also regional transportation.
I believe so, but that's probably a question that is better answered by our air quality modeler who is not here today, unless Sue has input on that.
Typically, son, yeah, typically you get your transportation numbers from the vehicle counts on the major and side roads.
So a lot of it could be coming from regional things where unless you limit the vehicles, you can't control them because we're not locally in control of the vehicle standards for big trucks coming or cars coming through from other areas.
Yes, but that's why it's important that the state is participating as well, right? So
And the
The-
federal government.
we can do things locally and we could even incentivize local transition. We can say if you operate more than 55% of the time in the region, maybe we give you a grant to use a different type of vehicle to help reduce emissions. But yes, you're right. There is limited things we can do locally. So great to hear that the state is participating because not all states did participate in this grant. So other questions on this? Sorry, go ahead.
Where does manufacturing fit into these charts?
So I believe manufacturing would be considered industrial or commercial, and it'd be under the energy sector. And then for depending on the size, it would either be a point source or an area source on the left-hand side. So point sources and area sources are both non-stationary, but point sources are required to report to the EPA and area sources are not. So it just basically reflects the size of them, whether or not they're considered a point or area source. Sue, anything to add? No? Okay. So it's a little strange because energy is the blue and it's all kind of lumped together for the inventory, and then the criteria is a little more broken out. So I can understand why you'd have those questions. So it's 1/3 roughly of our energy greenhouse gas emissions would be lumped into manufacturing and industrial sources. So whatever 1/3 of 50% is, if someone wants to do that math. Okay. So strategy prioritization, before we get into potential measures and asking you guys feedback. So there can be things that are done by the Council of Governments on behalf of the entire region. There are things that can be done by local governments. So we just give them money and they are responsible for doing it independently. There are things that can be done by other organizations, utilities, private companies, water districts, and more. Yes, thank you. And what I don't have on this slide is also state. So we're not super focused on state because we can give our feedback to the state, but in the end, it's their plan. But if you guys have state ideas, definitely, like I said, give them to the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. But these little 3 boxes show what we are looking for each measure, for each part of this effort. So for the implementation grants, air quality improvement, it's of interest to the region, it benefits disadvantaged communities, it's voluntary, and then can be implemented hopefully in 2025, because really the goal is as soon as possible we can start getting emissions reductions, but anytime between 2025 to 2027. So whenever you're giving your feedback today, one of the questions I'm going to be asking is, what can we do soon? What's feasible? And then for the implementation grants, everything from the first deliverables, so the PCAP applies, except just adding in looking for funding or looking for measures where maybe we cannot pay for them any other way other than implementation grant funding, because there's a lot of funding out there available, and so we should be strategic about what we ask for. Is cost effective, advances decarbonization, and is innovative. And then for the second deliverable, so that's a CCAP that's due in 2025, we'll be really looking for anything that could improve air quality between 2025 all the way out to 2050. So it'll be more long-term. And then we will set targets in there. And so we'll want measures that make it feasible for us to reach the targets that we set. So stakeholder engagement. If you guys scan the QR code, it'll take you to our website, but it really doesn't look that great on mobile. So if you have a computer, I do recommend that you actually just type in the website if you can. We have 2 surveys out right now. One survey is for agencies that are going to be implementing measures, so local governments, and then one is just for the general public to talk about what they are concerned about, what they want to see prioritized, but maybe they don't have the ability to actually do something themselves other than, make a personal choice like driving an electric vehicle or, fixing a water leak in your house. So if you go to the website under the tab that says take a survey, both those surveys are linked there. If you all could take the survey for community members and the general public, that'd be great. And then if you know of anyone that might be interested in implementing projects, so if you're active with your local governments and they're not already involved, definitely point them our way. We also will have several public meetings that, if you guys would like to help promote or attend, you're welcome to do so. So that's on the meetings tab on that page. And then we're meeting with our local governments as well. So just wanted to mention that, especially the public survey, because we have an executive board who we will need to approve our plan. And we want to be able to show them and the EPA that we've done our due diligence and we've tried to do a lot of public involvement and gotten a lot of feedback and also incorporated that feedback into our plan. So as much as you guys can, welcome all the feedback you're willing to give us, not only here, but also online.
I have a question. I know you have several options there, but is there anything specifically dedicated to the Spanish-speaking population? And also, I have to assume there are some people that do not have access to the internet and how they can give their input, what the outreach is for that.
Yes. So our website and the survey for the general public, there's a little button on the webpage where you hit translate to Spanish. And we have Spanish speakers in our department who's reviewed and made sure that it reads correctly. So ideally, we would be able to translate into more language like Vietnamese. We actually have a very large Vietnamese population. It's just time, and then also whether or not we have native speakers available to review the work. So Spanish at least is ready. To your point about the people who do not have internet access, that is a concern, and that's part of the reason why we're having these in-person public meetings that will be planned between now and probably February. We'll have several. And at those public meetings, we'll be printing out copies of the survey, the same one that's online for people to fill out. So we're trying, but we could probably be doing more.
And this is probably late, but for a significant portion of the Spanish-speaking population that is primarily Spanish-speaking, radio is a huge media reach for them. So I don't know, again, whether your outreach includes Spanish language radio stations that can reach that population.
We set aside some funding in our budget for promotional, what do we call it? We can't call it ads. We have to call it educational outreach. But we're running some Spotify ads, I believe, and maybe iHeartRadio that are both in English and Spanish, primarily to try to get people to come to the public meetings, but it would direct them to our website as well. But same thing, we could be doing more, probably. We could probably, never enough money to do all of the outreach that we want.
Sven, I noticed on here, a lot of the solutions are encouraging people to buy renewable energy, and having been in the and just come from the developers of these projects, we had a gigawatt, 20 gigawatt pipeline. And it's all waiting and waiting. So, 20 or 5 years, 4 years to get through the permitting process and get all the approvals. So, and I think if you look at the industry reports of what a lot of the solar developers and things are doing, they're ready to go. They're waiting on the government to get these things approved and moving faster.
Yes, one of Savannah's cohorts and myself attended a meeting with the TCEQ on Thursday. And one of the things that came up in that meeting was the necessity for legislative action as necessary to support plan implementation. I would think that efforts to expedite solar generation would fall into that bin at this point.
Yeah, whenever the priority climate action plan is available, if there are things you guys want to tell your representatives about how you support it and you think it's great and you love what we put in it, happy to let you guys do that. But
this is one of those elections have consequences things. So it's critical to vote, encourage our friends, neighbors, and cousins to vote as well.
So I did go to the website and there's a letter of support to the EPA administrator that looks like we can modify it to put the organization name in and whatnot.
Yep.
So is that something y'all want us to do? Because we can certainly do that.
sure. So we are taking letters of support primarily from people who want to work with us on planning and implementing. So it's mostly local governments, but if you guys would like to do that now, or if you wanted to review the PCAP and maybe give a letter of support or say, we approve of the measures that are in here, you guys could do that as well.
Okay.
Definitely would like as much feedback and support as you guys are willing to give us.
Okay.
Sue, you have a second suggestion?
Yeah, no, I want to piggyback on that. One of the things that we talked about with our planning team was the necessity to give the members of our executive board the assurance that they're not hanging out. And so letters of support for the PCAP, I think would help them feel more comfortable that what we're doing is necessary and important.
And supported by
And
the
supported.
region.
Yeah.
There's also on the webpage I think it says sign up for emails tab. So we have a mailing list just for this. So whenever draft documents are posted, we'll notify everyone. So if you guys don't mind signing up for that, we won't spam you with too many emails. I would encourage you to do so to stay up to date. And we could always come out at a later meeting once we have more documents drafted if you guys wanted us to present on how it's going. Do you have a question? No? Okay, I just saw you had the mic and I didn't know if. Oh, okay, great. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys some of the initial survey responses that we've gotten from people who are interested in implementing projects, and that way you guys can weigh in on whether or not it looks like we're kind of on the right track, or if you think the people who are responding to our survey aren't really being realistic, or if we're missing something. So the survey that is for implementing agencies covers all the sectors. We have over 150 measures on there where people can say if they're already doing it and they don't need additional funding, they're already doing it, but they want funding to expand. They're ready to do it, but they just need money to do it. They're very interested in doing, somewhat interested, not at all interested, or not applicable. And we've had feedback from utilities, we've had feedback from water districts, we've had feedback from local government. So this is kind of where we're directing anyone who wants to implement projects to kind of streamline the feedback that we're getting. I have just printed out the energy strategies that are in this survey. So that's what you guys have today. But if you want to see the full list, it's on our website. So publicinput.com/DFW AQIP. And then there's a PDF kind of at the bottom of the page that has all of the sectors, all of the measures. We can also email it to you guys if you want to look at it. That's not saying we're going to do all of them. That is just everything we could think of that we could do. And asking for feedback on which of these are important and which of these are feasible. Yes.
I haven't seen, you mentioned aviation today.
Mhm.
DFW Airport and Love Field are two of the major airports in this area.
Correct.
And are they being included in this? Are the greenhouse gases and the other emissions from aircraft both flying through the area, landing, taking off at the airports? Are they included?
So they are included under transportation. I took
Okay.
out the breakout, but aviation, off-road, and on-road are all included in that. I will tell you what I have been told by large airports, which is they are doing their best to reduce the emissions that they have control over, but the actual people who own and fly the planes, they don't have any kind of authority over them maybe using a sustainable aviation fuel instead of
Right.
regular. So that's kind of where the breakdown is.
So they can give you feedback about
Mhm.
what's happening,
Mhm.
but they can't control what they're doing
Yes.
because they have the ability to do that.
And
So there's also a large number of rental cars
Mhm.
and lots of other transportation related things that are involved with the airport, ground transportation.
Yep.
There's fuel going there. There's moving the fuel into the airport.
Yep.
A lot of electricity used at airports.
Mhm.
So aviation is a big picture in this, I would think.
yes, I agree. It is a significant contributor. It's just, at least I know Dallas Fort Worth International Airport is already being very aggressive with the amount of emissions that they have control over. So I think they're purchasing all renewable energy. They've worked with us on biodiesel. They're interested in renewable diesel for that equipment. They're interested in electrifying. So I would just say they're being very proactive. It's probably the carriers that we're really missing right now that we need to get them more involved.
I wish a lot of the area on the airport properties had solar panels on them, including hangar buildings.
Definitely, there's an opportunity for that.
I have a little bit of feedback on that. As to the carriers, their agreements with the airports already have requirements for them to comply with all applicable environmental laws. So to the extent that this is coming in as a federal requirement, they're required to already do that. And the same is true for the rental companies, the car rental companies that operate out of the airports. They too are required to meet all environmental regulations and laws.
I know these aren't really regulations. These are
Voluntary things that they can do. There's
Right.
no regulation to use sustainable aviation fuel.
This is carrots rather than sticks. Right here, we've got carrots. We're giving people money rather than sticks. So one thing I wonder about is, could some of the money for this be used, for instance, by the car rental companies to help electrify their fleets, or to use for the airports to electrify all the vehicles that are going around the airport doing
Mhm.
things?
Yes. One of the measures we do have in the transportation aviation sector is to decarbonize ground support equipment. However, we do need to think about, is there existing money out there, which I'll tell you there is. There's a lot of money that maybe this isn't the best opportunity for it. And maybe we just need to do more outreach to get more people to do that. So yeah, and I think incentivizing sustainable aviation fuel, to your point about carrots, is in there as well. So we'll see if that comes to fruition, if that's supported. No, I don't think so, but sorry, that's a little tangent about aviation. Sorry, guys. Yeah.
I would just note that DFW Airport was the first airport in the world to achieve the top level of carbon accreditation. And they are a really good pilot for a bunch of technologies that other facilities can use locally. So they're doing what they can. Both Love Field and DFW Airport also have voluntary carbon offset programs that their passengers are encouraged to participate in. So I think they're doing as much as they can at this point in time. given the state of technology on air transportation.
And in case you haven't noticed, some of the rental companies are having on there the choice for you to rent an EV instead of a gas guzzler.
So for the energy sector, sorry, I guess I could have brought the transportation summary, but we just brought energy today. As of December 5th, we had about 45 responses. It's gone up since then, but I had to cut it off at some point to make this PowerPoint summary. But only half of them responded to the energy sector. So we do let people skip sectors. So definitely need some more feedback on energy. But some of the people who were represented are transit, private companies, local governments, school districts, nonprofits. And the energy sector should have about 48 measures total. At least unless I miscounted on your page, there should be 48. And we did have in that survey a section where people could talk about barriers. Some barriers that did come up were cost, lack of staff, which kind of ties into cost, at least for local governments. And then one thing that was a little unique was lack of fair credit for exported solar energy. So I think maybe that comes into the net metering discussion we were having earlier, where maybe that's a state thing that they should be including in their plan. I'm not sure that's something we can do locally. Yeah, we'll see. So I'm not going to go back because I'm scared this thing won't load, but we were considering anything that was ranked 2 through 5 on the survey to be a priority. So that essentially means that someone said, we are interested in doing this. If there's funding available, we want to participate in this. And so what I want to point out is, keep in mind only 19 people responded to the energy sector. I would look at kind of the 10 line because that means that roughly more than half of the people who responded to the energy sector said we should be doing this. So retrofitting lighting with LEDs, I think was actually the highest ranked. There's a lot more because we kind of have this broken out. So that's part of the reason I brought that with you guys. So you could be looking at it as I'm flipping through the slides. Smart grid and behind the meter technologies was pretty highly rated. So almost half people said that's of interest. Energy service companies to implement energy efficiency measures in city-owned buildings was highly rated. Okay, sorry, it did change. Providing training in operation management and maintenance of relevant building systems was highly ranked. So there's a discussion of, there's probably a lot of energy efficient things we could be doing if we just took care of our buildings better and we'd save money and not consume as much energy. Developing local workforce, and then also increasing education on renewable energy and energy efficiency conservation. Claiming quantified benefits from just an educational outreach is not quantifiable. Air quality benefits from an education is sometimes difficult. So we're not sure if it's the best fit for this, but there is probably an argument to be made that if we just train people to turn their lights off and the impact that they could have just by turning their lights off whenever they leave the room, probably would save us a lot in emissions. The other things also is community scale renewable energy. Solar regulations was something that came up quite a bit. So how can we streamline it, make it easier for people to adopt solar and industry to adopt solar? And then, sorry, I skipped the one at the top, restructuring electric and water rates. Half people said that there's a need for that as well. So this is just a summary because I know the graphs are a little hard to read. So we had 3 sections in the energy. So we had a general kind of everything. We have residential, and we also have industrial. So this is the things that were highest rated for general. Do you guys have any comments, or do you want me to go through the residential? And so this is being answered by people who actually want to implement these projects. So
You say people, these are individuals or cities,
local governments primarily,
okay.
but also private entities. I don't think we've picked up any industrial facilities yet, but we probably will.
Okay.
Utilities. So it's implementers. It's people that actually have the ability to take this money and develop a program with it.
Okay, people can spend them.
Yeah, that's probably a better way to phrase it.
Speaking as an individual, I'm not a local government or anything, but I had a long quest to select a good roofing system for my home. And in that time, I learned a whole lot about the consequences of asphalt roofs that are predominant throughout the Metroplex. And almost everybody uses asphalt shingles. And they have a tremendous environmental impact, not only with the manufacturing of them, as we've seen in South Dallas, where GAF is being pressured to close the plant. It's impacting the neighborhood and their health, but also on the release of volatile organic compounds. And I was wondering if COG has ever studied that, and are VOCs included in the hazard assessment?
VOCs, will be included. I don't think we've done any study on the best type of shingles at this point, and I don't know if that's something we're considering. I don't think it was included in anything, but Sue.
Not to date. There was discussion of that. We do the regional codes. There was discussion of it in the codes committee, but we declined to make recommendations on that because it is basically a market decision. Kind of understood.
It's a market decision because if you want to put a metal roof on, it's extremely expensive and time consuming. So are there even alternatives that make sense for you? Well, I would say, I've seen it run across. They have highly trained people. I mean, our neighbors across the street have a beautiful metal roof they put on a few years ago. It took 3 weeks because the guys weren't trained to fit each, or that they didn't have enough employees that were properly trained to put it together right. So I don't know if the guy could only show up every third day or what, but it took forever. It looks great, but it's expensive and it's time consuming. So if there are alternatives, I mean, we'd put on a metal roof, but, and well, I've got the mic. This is a slight change from that, but I was interested in the mixing of water and electric rates. I'm a Dallas resident and the water rates are pretty thoroughly tiered, but it's the electric rates that are backwards, right? You've got the REPs that sell you, if you use more energy, they sell it to you for less per unit. But mixing those two things, you know, they're not the same thing at all. It should rate highly for the electric rates. I don't know how other cities do it, but Dallas water rates are already tiered.
We do have a water sector, so maybe it would have been better to just put water rates in that one. I can't remember if it's that one is in there as well, but I think the thought process was there is so much energy consumption when we are purifying water, that if there's a way to incentivize or disincentivize using less water, therefore there's an energy reduction further up the stream, essentially. But
across the country, there is a pretty strong nexus between power use and water infrastructure. And so it's things like putting cogeneration on your sludge process. It's using combined heat and power to pull the heat off your stormwater pumps and reuse it later. It's that sort of thing. And that to date has not been on the radar of the local utilities. They're looking at it now. As the cost of power goes up, there is that as well. Yeah.
Going back to the roof discussion, does anyone know if there's another option other than maybe a metal roof for, I rent. Tiles, is that what you said?
Well, there's cedar shake roofs, which used to be very popular. There's clay tile, concrete, but they're more expensive systems.
TPO?
Yeah, the Tesla system. But you have to look at also the sustainability. If you have an asphalt roof, you're one hailstorm away from picking up the phone and calling the adjuster out. Who's paying for all these roofs? It's all of us. I just saw a 30% increase in my homeowners.
where the shingles go. And they go Shingle City, Big Mountain, Shingle Mountain. Yeah.
It didn't say green roofs.
But from the legal aspect, you also have to look at your deed restrictions to make sure that you can put up a roof other than a certain poundage asphalt roof.
Interesting discussion, something to consider for sure. I don't think we covered that, but
I'm in the process of replacing roof, pulling the solar panels and replacing the roof. And metal isn't an option for me because of where I live, because of the neighborhood, which is very backwards, and I've been fighting that for years. So now I'm looking at Energy Star rated composite shingle roofs. And believe it or not, it sounds like a contradiction in terms, but they make them. I don't know whether they're worth the premium that they charge for them, but there's anybody have any opinions?
I might just add, if you're looking at a homeowners association restrictions, the metal roof that I put on is called stone coated steel, and it has the appearance of a shake profile. In fact, from the street, it's not standing seam. It's not what you would think of as a metal roof, but it looks pretty much like a shake roof. But it's a very durable system. It's mechanically fastened, so there's no wind lift off like there is with asphalt shingles as well.
not too
Okay, we
anymore.
need to
Sorry.
move forward so we can.
Sorry, guys. I didn't realize we were going so late. Okay, so we've kind of started talking about residential and commercial sector. But these are our measures for that sector. So I mentioned earlier, residential is about 1/3 of the 50% of the greenhouse gases that are emitted in the region. And it's actually the largest. It's a little over 1/3. So again, mostly incentives. So construction of net zero homes, incentives for purchasing energy efficient appliances. I think someone mentioned earlier, possibly wanting to replace a gas water heater with an electric one. Maybe we just provide incentives for local people to do that. Group energy switch and purchase programs, residential weatherization assistance programs. I think maybe different roofs could fall into that. I'm not sure if there's an argument to be made there. Residential solar projects, energy efficiency retrofits for residents, and energy audits for residents. And then you can see that the bottom two, more than half of all respondents said they were interested in. And then the second highest was the residential weatherization assistance program. So I saw a question come up in the chat, but I couldn't read it. Was it about this slide?
Yeah, so Phil Timmons a few minutes ago had a question if a local community college would be considered a state entity for the purposes, I think of whatever the discussion was at the time, or a corporate hospital would be considered an industry entity.
I believe local colleges are still considered municipalities and they're subject to state rule, even community colleges. I am not sure where hospitals would be classified. I would think commercial. I don't think they would be under industry in our inventory. Does that help?
I think so. And then there was another question about, let's see, Plano has recently replaced some of the light concrete streets with darker asphalt streets. These new streets are really smooth and go in quickly, but is there any concern about the amount of heat absorbed and causing more global warming?
Yes, we do have some measures about urban heat island, but I believe they might be under agriculture a little more. I believe it might be under here as well. But urban heat island is kind of something that crosses a couple different sectors where it's caused by transportation because we're putting in a lot of concrete, and then, but it can be mitigated through agriculture, and then it also impacts energy. So it kind of crosses all three. But it is something we're going to have to take into consideration. I'm not super familiar with the Plano project though that they did. But Plano is one of our local governments, so I can ask that are working with us, so I can ask them. Questions? No? Okay. I don't know if I'm making the same mistake as Sue, but I'm trying to change slides and I don't. Oh, it's okay. I didn't want to hit it too many times and get forward. Okay. Okay, so commercial and industrial power generation. So this is kind of lumping in the larger point sources and area sources and what can they do. So the things that are being highly rated here, the highest rated was actually conducting energy efficiency retrofits. So, but there are things like setting greenhouse gas performance standards, developing renewable portfolio standards. These are not quite carrots. And these are things that would probably have to be done at the state level. Not sure how much of this we could do locally. But also phasing out traditional fossil fuel power generation. That's again something that maybe we don't have a lot of control over locally, but if the state put it in their plan, that would be great. Renewable natural gas and commercial and industrial solar projects. So basically diversifying our energy that's being produced is in there as well. And then here's the next line for commercial, industrial, and power generation. So educating, again, educating is ranking very high. I think it's something that a lot of people we just need to do more education. But again, quantifying the benefits of that is a little difficult. Energy performance management standards. So that kind of ties into there's probably a lot we can do right now if we're just better about managing our buildings, was ranked highly. And then outreach to customers and renewable energy and energy efficiency projects, and then also cool roofs was voted pretty highly as well. I think there was a little discussion earlier about green. So, and then this is just a summary slide because I know with commercial, industrial, and power generation, we had to break it up into 2 slides so you guys can see all of these. More than half of respondents voted, yes, we think this is a good idea. Okay, so we don't actually have a lot of time for discussion, but as I mentioned, we have those surveys online. So please, everyone take that, give us your feedback. Whenever you see the survey for the general public, we kind of mirrored the survey for implementing agencies where there's a transportation sector, there's an energy sector, there's water, wastewater. You can vote on which ones you think are of concern to you. And then there's also some open text fields at the bottom where you can leave some comments about other things you think we should look at. But these were the questions I was going to go over, but I don't necessarily think we have time, but maybe we can come back for a future meeting and have a shorter list of measures and go over these questions. But any comments initially? Questions? I think this might be the last slide I have other than contact.
One thing I didn't see was they talked about solar for process heat for industry, but I didn't see anything about thermal energy storage for process heat. Like Rondo Energy is doing some with different materials that they put in basically a big igloo that will keep the heat, and you can use renewable energy when the renewable energy is abundant. Like at night, you can heat up. Either you can use cold water storage for buildings, or you can use some of these, they call them hot rock storage for industrial heat, where you can keep heat for multiple days, so that you don't have to have the sun on that specific day. You can, you know, get the high enough temperatures that you can pull energy off and not have to use the grid to do it unless the grid is available.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar. I mean, I'm familiar with battery storage, but if you wanted to send us what's going on, or leave a comment.
What he's talking about is different variations of combined heat and power.
Oh, okay.
Which I believe, well, they're technologies that are available.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is to collect heat or collect power and store it when you can, and then use it when it's not available. So I think we can probably clarify that, but I think it is in the suite of things we're looking at.
Yes. I think combined heat and power might be under water and wastewater. So maybe that's why we need it here too. Okay.
So I have one sort of comment and one question. And so the question is, and we were going to discuss it in a board meeting, is the NTREG, possibility of NTREG getting involved in the COG Clean Cities sponsorship? Well, I mean, would it benefit COG if we do it? I mean, and
so Clean Cities is my day job. This is my night job.
okay.
So I'm on Lori Clark's team. If you're familiar with Clean Cities, all we primarily work on is vehicle decarbonization.
Mhm.
We welcome all sponsors. Sponsorships really we use for matching funds on grants. We use to do things that we can't pay for using federal funds. So the sponsorship is really our way of getting local funding, which is a requirement for a lot of things. If you want to be involved, we welcome you to. We would give you, all of our sponsors, we, put you on our slide deck. We shout you out at meetings. So if you guys would like to,
sure,
I'd love to have you. But
all right.
I think, yeah, I guess he knows our more than I do.
You're talking about in real dollars, not thousands of dollars. You're not.
Yeah, no, we're pretty low in the amount. And to be honest, we don't have a ton of sponsors, but we also don't push it very much. Our team they're not typically things that we cannot do with our funding. So this is just in those rare instances whenever we do. And it's also an opportunity for us to shout out you all and acknowledge that you're working with us and you're supportive of our work. So if you'd like to, you're welcome to.
Okay. So I think we might do that. Well, like I said, we'll discuss it and vote on the board meeting, but I like the idea of doing that, getting involved. But I think, the comment would be regarding the dissemination of information. And I understand the limitations y'all are working within, but there's, I think, a lot of confusion about how much tax credit is available for, say, buying a heat pump for a house or making energy efficiency improvements to a business or a house or whatnot.
Yeah.
And I think if there was some place on your website people could go to and they understood it was there, and it's just broken out in very everyday language, not a bunch of bureaucratic gobbledygook, but I think that would be beneficial.
Yeah, we have an air quality funding webpage, but I'm not sure we have the tax credits for energy on there. So we could definitely add that and send you that webpage. And then I will say in the plan, everything that we put in the plan, we will identify funding sources, and the funding sources can include tax credits. So that might help some,
sure,
where people can go and see this is a plan and these are the funding sources for it. So maybe that would help, but we can definitely work on updating our funding webpage to make that more clear. I will say government gobbledygook is probably like my default language. So do my best to simplify it.
Also, I don't see him here today, but Edgar Alvarez. So the U.S. Department of Agriculture has their funding source for putting a lot of money from the DOE, I think, comes through there to rural areas, which would be in your council. So are you working with them so that people, one of the problems is that these different government groups and quasi-government groups communicate to people, but you got the companies and individuals get these things coming from multiple directions, and they can't say, well, do these funding things, what do they go for? Which one can I use? Do they add to each other? If I get one, does that mean I can't take the other? All this kind of information. So is there any coordination, I guess, is what my comment is.
So I wouldn't necessarily say we are actively coordinating with the USDA. We definitely promote their programs though, and then direct questions to them as needed. I know, I think it's our economic department maybe collaborated with the USDA on a webinar a while ago that was even educational to me. So we could probably do more of that. But yeah, the USDA is a lot of great opportunities, but it's amazing how often I talk to someone that's outside of our core county and they didn't even know that they had that option. Because
I
especially
was
the,
amazed to find out they had that.
yeah,
But you know, in a lot of your counties, a lot of them are going to get have the possibility to get a lot of money from the USDA
mhm.
to individuals and to farmers and to small businesses. So
Especially the REAP program. They have so much the rural energy. I don't remember
yes,
what else that stands for. That's a great opportunity that we're trying to get more people to participate in.
right. They'll fund it, I think,
because they have so much-
50% of the project.
Yeah.
Now.
So. Okay. So that's our contact information. There's a lot of us working on this. If you have questions about the inventory specifically, I'll probably direct you to the bottom part of our page. That's our air quality technical team. They're really the lead on the inventory development. If you email me a very technical question about our inventory, I will probably just rope them in, but you can. And then Sue and then several other people within our department are really the leads on strategy development and trying to get feedback on measures, and then also the kind of public feedback part. So if you have questions about that, definitely reach out. And like I said, we can come back in a couple months if you guys want an update. Saturdays are easy, which is nice because we don't have work.
Can we put this document on where we can be accessed from our website or other places? Can we distribute this publicly?
The slide deck? Yes.
Okay, good.
I will say the summary of the current feedback for the strategies, that's not anywhere online right now, but there's no reason it can't be. Just you guys got a sneak peek that
Okay.
other people haven't gotten to see yet.
And we'd be glad if we do put it somewhere, we'll be glad to keep it updated if you send us updates so it's
Okay.
not going to get stale. That's
Yeah.
the problem with a lot of these things, they get stale.
Mhm.
But obviously you got deadlines coming up here in March and April, so it needs to be updated.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I believe we will take y'all up on the offer to bring you back here in 4 months or 5 months or 6 months so that you can give us an update and we can kind of coordinate a little further. But we do appreciate y'all coming today, and we will be trying to work with y'all pretty closely in the future as we work on our program to get a lot more solar installations in the DFW Metroplex in the next 7 years. And if you have any questions for us, please let us know. We will communicate with y'all. Now we have your email addresses. And but again, we appreciate y'all spending the time and effort to come over here and present today. Again, thank y'all a lot. And if there are no questions or comments from the NTREG membership, then I'll go ahead and close the meeting for today. Thank y'all very much. Yeah, I think we should. Okay. Ask them to hang around for a little bit.